It didn't feel new. That's what Ethan noticed first. There was something about them that didn't surprise him, didn't shock him, didn't even fully confuse him. It felt familiar. Not in a clear way, not in something he could explain immediately. Just a quiet recognition. The way they spoke, the distance, the subtle control, the emotional unpredictability. None of it felt completely foreign. Ethan leaned back slightly, because attraction usually feels like discovery, something different, something new. But this felt like something he had seen before, experienced before. Maybe not in the same form, but in the same pattern. And that's what made it different. Because instead of questioning it, part of him accepted it, quickly, naturally, without resistance. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now the question wasn't just about attraction, it was deeper. Why does something unhealthy feel familiar instead of wrong? It wasn't just one person. That's what made Ethan pause. It was the pattern. Different faces, different situations, same dynamic, the same type of presence, the same emotional distance, the same pull, and the same outcome. Ethan noticed it when he stepped back, looked at it from distance, because individually, each situation felt unique, but collectively, they looked identical. A conversation replayed in his mind, different voice, same tone, same structure, short responses, controlled emotion, unpredictable engagement. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now it wasn't about them, it was about repetition. Why does this keep happening? The question stayed, because repetition removes coincidence and reveals something else, a pattern, not in others, in his own choices. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now something uncomfortable started to form. Maybe this isn't random. Maybe this isn't just attraction. Maybe this is recognition of something he already knows. It's not new, Daniel's voice came calmly. Ethan looked up. It feels like it. Daniel shook his head once. It feels familiar, he said. Silence, because that changed everything. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now the feeling had a different meaning. Not excitement, not curiosity, recognition. Daniel continued, tone steady. You're not discovering something, he said. A small pause. You're recognizing something. That line stayed, because it shifted the direction completely. This wasn't about finding something different. It was about repeating something known. Ethan frowned slightly. But why would I choose that? He asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. You're not choosing it consciously, he said. Another pause. You're responding to what feels normal. Ethan stayed quiet, because now it made sense. The ease, the lack of resistance, the immediate pull. It didn't come from logic, it came from familiarity. Daniel stepped back slightly. And familiarity, he added, feels safe, even when it isn't. And that's where it landed. Because safety isn't always what's good. Sometimes, it's just what you've experienced before. It didn't start here. That was the truth Ethan began to see. This wasn't about the present moment, or the current person, or the current situation. It went further back, to something earlier, something repeated, something learned. Ethan sat still, because now the pattern had a direction. Childhood, not as memory, as conditioning. The way attention was given, the way emotion was expressed, the way connection felt. Unpredictable, conditional, sometimes present, sometimes withdrawn. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now it wasn't abstract anymore, it was structured. If connection felt inconsistent early, then inconsistency feels normal later. If attention had to be earned, then effort feels necessary. If emotional safety was unclear, then clarity feels unfamiliar. And that's the problem. Not what you choose, what feels right to you. Because what feels right is often what feels familiar, even if it's unhealthy, even if it repeats the same outcome. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now the realization was clear. You're not choosing them, you're recognizing something old and following it without realizing where it came from. It didn't feel chaotic. That was the first thing Ethan realized. Even when things were unclear, even when responses changed, even when behavior didn't stay consistent, it didn't immediately feel wrong. It felt normal, familiar, something he could handle, something he had handled before. Ethan leaned back slightly, because most people would feel discomfort in instability. They would question it, pull away from it, but he didn't, not immediately. Instead, he adapted to it, adjusted to the shifts, accepted the inconsistency as part of the interaction. And that's the sign. Not that instability exists, that it doesn't disturb you. Because when you grow up around unpredictability, you don't reject it later, you recognize it. And recognition feels like comfort, even when it isn't. The moment of attention felt significant, stronger than it should have. A simple response, a small shift in tone, a brief moment of engagement, and it stayed longer than expected. Ethan noticed how his focus increased in those moments, how he became more aware, more present, more invested, not because of what was given, because of what it meant. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now the pattern was clear. Attention wasn't assumed, it was earned. Something that had to be maintained, protected, worked for, and that changes the dynamic. Because now, you don't just receive attention, you value it more than necessary. Because when attention wasn't consistent early, it becomes something you chase later, not consciously, automatically. Because earning it feels familiar, and familiarity feels right. Ethan noticed it in real time, not after, during. A conversation started, and part of his attention shifted, not just to what was being said, but how it was being said. Tone, timing, expression, subtle changes. Everything registered, automatically, without effort. He adjusted slightly, matched tone, chose words carefully, stayed aware. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now it was clear he wasn't just interacting, he was scanning, constantly, for changes, for signals, for shifts. And that comes from somewhere. Because when emotional environments are unpredictable, you learn to read them quickly, accurately, to stay aligned, to avoid disruption. And that skill doesn't turn off. It follows you into every interaction, even when it's no longer needed. What works for you? The question was simple. Ethan paused, not because he didn't have an answer, because he didn't check himself first. His mind moved outward. What would fit the situation? What would keep things smooth? What would align best? And only after that, him. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now it was clear. His priority wasn't internal, it was external, focused on others, on maintaining balance, on avoiding friction. And that creates a pattern where your needs come second, automatically, not intentionally, conditioned. Because when early environments required adjustment, you learned to adapt, to minimize disruption, to stay acceptable. And over time, that becomes default. You don't think about yourself first, you think about what works. And that's the shift. Not that you don't have needs, that you don't place them first, even when you should. The discomfort was there, subtle, but present. A shift in tone, a moment of distance, a lack of clarity. Ethan noticed it, but he didn't act on it. He stayed, observed, adjusted, waited for it to settle. Because leaving didn't feel like the first option. Enduring did. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now it was clear.
The threshold was different. What should have created distance didn't. What should have raised a boundary didn't. Instead, it was absorbed, managed internally. Because when discomfort becomes familiar early, tolerance increases later. Not consciously, automatically. You stay longer, accept more, explain more, because it doesn't feel new. It feels known. And that's the danger. Not that discomfort exists, that you don't leave when it appears. It didn't make sense logically, but it worked psychologically. Ethan sat still, the structure becoming clearer now. The brain doesn't prioritize what's healthy. It prioritizes what's known, what it has experienced before, what it understands, even if that experience wasn't stable, even if it wasn't safe. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now the difference was clear. Familiar doesn't mean good. It means recognized. And recognition creates ease, because there's no uncertainty, no need to figure it out. Even if the experience itself is uncomfortable, it still feels predictable. And predictability feels like control. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now it made sense. Why instability didn't push him away. Why inconsistency didn't feel alarming. Why emotional distance didn't feel unfamiliar. Because it matched something already stored, something learned early. And that's the psychology. You don't move towards what's best. You move towards what feels known, even if it repeats the same outcome. The conversation was different. The person was different. The environment was different. And still, the pattern felt the same. Short responses, controlled emotion, unpredictable engagement. Ethan noticed it immediately. Not as confusion, as recognition. He had seen this before, felt this before, responded to this before, and the response came automatically. Slight adjustment, increased awareness, subtle effort, trying to align, trying to understand. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now it was clear.
It wasn't the person creating the pattern, it was the familiarity activating it. Because even when everything changes externally, the internal response stays the same until you change it. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now the situation wasn't unique, it was repeated, in a different form, but with the same structure, and that's how patterns continue, not through others, through recognition. It wasn't intentional. That's what made it difficult to accept. Ethan sat still, because now the realization was clear. He wasn't choosing these situations consciously. He was recreating something automatically. The same emotional structure, the same dynamic, the same pattern. Not because he wanted it, because he knew it. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now the truth was uncomfortable. Familiarity doesn't just attract, it repeats. It recreates itself through choices that don't feel like choices, through responses that feel natural, through situations that feel similar, because the mind prefers what it understands, even if it leads to the same outcome. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now it was clear. This wasn't about bad luck or coincidence. It was about repetition of something learned early and followed unconsciously until it's recognized. Because what you don't see as a pattern, you continue as a reality. Now that Ethan could see it, something changed, not outside, inside. The same interaction happened, same tone, same pattern, but this time it didn't feel neutral. It felt clear, and that clarity created discomfort because now he couldn't ignore it. He noticed the distance, the inconsistency, the subtle control
in real time. Ethan leaned back slightly because before he adapted to it. Now he observed it, and observation removes illusion. What once felt normal now felt misaligned, and that creates tension because part of him still recognized it as familiar, but another part saw it as unhealthy. Two responses at the same time. Ethan exhaled slowly because now the struggle wasn't external, it was internal, between what felt known and what was now understood. And that's where awareness becomes uncomfortable, not when you see the truth, when you can't unsee it. "You're not attracted." Daniel's voice was calm. Ethan looked up. "Then why does it feel like it?" Daniel didn't rush. "You're repeating something," he said. Silence, because that changed the direction completely. Ethan leaned back slightly. Repeating, not choosing, not discovering, repeating. Daniel continued, tone steady. "This isn't new behavior," he said. A small pause. "It's familiar behavior." That line stayed because it connected everything. The pull, the comfort, the lack of resistance, all of it came from recognition, not preference. Ethan frowned slightly. "So I'm just stuck in it?" he asked. Daniel shook his head once. "No," he said. Another pause. "You're aware of it now." That was the difference, because awareness changes position, from inside the pattern to observing it. Daniel stepped back slightly. "You don't break patterns by avoiding them," he added. A pause. "You break them by choosing differently when they appear." And then he stopped, because that was enough. Because once you see it, you can't follow it the same way again. Now Ethan could see the full loop, not just parts of it. The beginning, the middle, the outcome. Childhood, where instability felt normal. Then attraction to the same emotional structure. Then engagement, trying to navigate it, trying to make it work. Then the same result, discomfort, confusion, unresolved tension. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now it wasn't abstract, it was structured, clear, repeatable, predictable. And that changed everything. Because once a pattern is visible, it loses its unpredictability. It becomes something you can identify before it develops, before it deepens. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now the realization was complete. This wasn't about one person or one situation. It was a system running automatically until now, until he saw it fully. The next moment came. Same type of presence, same tone, same emotional distance, and the same familiar pull. But this time, Ethan paused, not because he didn't feel it, because he did, clearly, but he didn't follow it. He observed it, separated it. This feels familiar. That thought stayed, and instead of moving toward it, he stayed still. Ethan leaned back slightly, because this was the shift. Not removing the feeling, not forcing a different reaction, just not acting on what felt automatic. Because what feels natural is often what's been repeated, not what's right. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now control had changed, not outside, inside. He wasn't reacting based on familiarity anymore. He was choosing based on awareness. And that's the difference between repeating a pattern and breaking it. It showed up again. Different face, same presence, same tone, same emotional distance. And Ethan noticed it immediately, not as attraction, as recognition. The way they spoke, the way they held back, the subtle unpredictability, all of it matched something he already knew. And for a moment, the old response appeared, that pull, that curiosity, that quiet urge to move closer, to understand, to engage.
Ethan leaned back slightly, because now this was the test, not of the situation, of himself. Would he follow the same pattern again, or stay with what he now understood? Because the familiarity was still there, but now so was awareness. The moment stayed open, waiting, not for them, for him. The pull didn't disappear, it stayed, clear, recognizable, almost automatic. But this time, Ethan didn't move with it. He noticed it, separated it. This feels familiar, not right. That thought stayed, and instead of stepping forward, he stayed still. No extra engagement, no added attention, no internal extension. The moment passed, naturally, without becoming something more. Ethan leaned back slightly, because this was the shift, not removing the feeling, but not following it. Because the feeling came from the past, but the choice was made in the present, and that changes everything. Because patterns don't break when feelings disappear, they break when behavior changes. Ethan sat quietly, no overthinking, no analysis, just clarity. Because now something was fully understood. The pull, the comfort, the recognition, none of it meant it was right. It meant it was known. Ethan leaned back slightly, because now the difference was clear. What feels like home is not always safe. Sometimes it's just repeated again and again. Because the mind doesn't question familiarity, it accepts it without resistance, without awareness, until you see it. And once you see it, it changes. Ethan exhaled slowly, because now the truth was simple. Familiar doesn't mean healthy, it means remembered. And what's remembered can be repeated or changed. Nothing outside had changed. The same people, the same patterns, the same dynamics still existed. But Ethan didn't move the same way anymore. He noticed, but didn't follow. He felt, but didn't react automatically. He understood, and that created distance, not from others, from repetition. Daniel passed by, a brief glance, no words, none needed, because the shift was visible, not in action, in restraint. Ethan leaned back slightly, calm, grounded, aware, because now he understood something most people don't. It didn't feel familiar because it was right. It felt familiar because he had lived it before. And this time, he chose differently.